Hello, everybody, and good morning. Well, we have taken up a hell of a job, actually, frankly, demystifying blockchain in 20 minutes here on stage. Lucky enough, we have two experts in the field. We have Caleb Silver from Investopedia. He's the CEO of the company. And we have David Bailey. He's, I'm sorry, you're editor-in-chief.
Editor-in-chief.
Right? You're the CEO here.
Yeah, hopefully my boss is listening.
David is the CEO of BTC Inc., which is actually owning one of the eldest sources, information sources in the blockchain and cryptocurrency sphere, Bitcoin Magazine, among many other things, right? So we want to do some serious myth busting here in the next 20 minutes. And it's not only us on stage, but we're going to be using Slido to keep this interactive and to keep you involved. Please post your favorite myth you want to have debunked here on stage. And we'll come to it, and I'll have the privilege of choosing some to present here on stage. But perhaps we start by getting an impression who's in the audience. So who of you had a very bad day on the weekend checking your wallets? So who owns some crypto? Who is always, okay, not that many. So we can adjust the level of myth banking here a little bit, perhaps, and start with a question I hear often as a journalist covering the field, which is basically, you know, that's all interesting, blockchain and so, but to me it's an answer or a solution to a problem that hasn't been there before. What do you think about that? Is that a myth, a claim? What do you think, David?
Yeah, so I agree with that to a certain degree, that we don't really have the right framework to think about how to apply blockchain technology in general. I mean, it's a trust framework, and trust is a very confusing, a mystifying topic. You know, I think if you were to parallel this to the internet, in the early days of the internet, media companies would take their newspaper, digitize it, and put the exact page of the newspaper on the screen, and you would click next page, next page, next page. So I think to a certain degree, that's what we're doing with blockchain applications. But as far as a solution to a problem we haven't had before, this is definitely a problem that we've had before. We've just had it in an analog version. So this is a reinvention of some of the trust mechanisms we have in the analog world, just designed for the digital world.
Right. And you could have said the same thing 20, 25 years ago. Is an online bookstore the solution to a problem I don't have or don't need? Well, at the time, you couldn't have made that assumption, but now some people can't live without Amazon.com or Amazon.prime. So blockchain's similar. We're in the early stages, and the solutions will come about as the technology develops and more industries start applying it.
Look at this. We have a great audience. The first myths are coming in. And I'll take one from Anonymous. There is no true use case for the blockchain yet. Big myth, is it? David?
Well, so answer number one, use case number one, Bitcoin. All right, there you go. So Bitcoin is, without a doubt, something that's used around the world. Our company uses it every day. Cryptocurrency has about 30 million users. Bitcoin, if we had to guess, has about 10 to 15 million users. So use case number one. But I think the underlying point is that we've had kind of blockchain without Bitcoin for now coming up on maybe 6 years, and we haven't actually seen any applications deployed in a production manner in the enterprise world. And I think that's a pretty fair criticism, and it gets back to my point, like, are we conceptualizing how to apply this technology or how to apply digital trust in the wrong ways? And I think there's a world of depth to explore there.
I think a lot of folks are waiting for it to be a world changer, but that takes evolution. This is not a revolution. Industries are still learning how to apply it. Supply chain management could be the one that's most useful for, but I think we lost me here. But okay. It's still something that's in development. So if you're waiting for that overnight change, you're going to be waiting a little while.
Yeah. Let's tap a little bit in your expertise, because you have a lot of data from, obviously, your users. I think 100 million monthly. And
so we're doing about 100 million monthly page views. And at its height, cryptocurrency currency, Bitcoin was 10% of site traffic back when the price was at its parabolic height. It's obviously come down since, but we're fascinated by the questions that our readers asked us on the way up and on the way down. Everything from what is blockchain, how do I invest in it, what's the difference between these coins or those coins, to how do I short it, how do I sell it, how do I protect it on the way down. And we were still leveling out, but the fascination with how to treat it as a security, something you could trade or invest in, and something you could build businesses with is ever present on our site.
One of the biggest myths or claims we hear repeatedly is it's all a big bubble, right? It will go away. Will it, or is it already the whole system? Is it too big to fail already? Looking around at MoneyConf, you have to have the impression. Look at market capitalization, you can have the impression. What's your take? I mean, you're heavily invested in the business, so I think your hopes are clear.
So I don't know if there's such a thing as too big to fail, truly. But Bitcoin's been through, I guess, 6 bubbles now, booms and busts. Our opinion on this is that Bitcoin has a natural virality built into it, where it functions similar to an algae bloom. You see these rapid growth periods, excessive growth, malinvestment, and then the inevitable contraction. But it makes sense as the price of Bitcoin increases. People want to socialize and talk about Bitcoin. They want to brag to their friends about how much money they're making in Bitcoin. And so that virality engine kicks in until there's some cataclysmic event that causes the next cycle to repeat. So, I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2012. I've been through a lot of different booms and busts. I don't think this boom and bust is any different than any of the previous ones. So my question would be, if this is a bubble, why is this situation any different than any past situations? And if you zoom out, it becomes very clear this isn't a bubble. The number of transactions is increasing, the number of users are increasing, the number of applications are increasing, the number of companies supporting it, and the infrastructure is increasing. These are, I feel like, undeniable truths if you're looking at it in more than 12-month intervals.
Right. If it's a bubble, it's a bubble in a formation of many other bubbles that will eventually lead to something. So we've seen bubble cycles before in early internet, voice over IP, but the fact that it's becoming more and more widespread and more people are investing in it shows you that it's the beginning of something. We don't know what that'll turn into. But I was just listening to the CFO of Square. Yeah. They're making a big bet on it, and they're not the only ones. So when you see that start to happen with public companies of that scale who reach that many people, there's something happening there that we have to pay attention.
Okay. One of the other big myths, and thank you from Mattis from the audience, he's pointed at one of the other really big myths that keeps popping up again and again is that Bitcoin, Ether, and all the other tokens, that they have no real intrinsic value. What's your point on that?
Well, first off, we can't put all of the different cryptocurrencies in the same bucket, because I agree that there are many cryptos that are out there that have no intrinsic value. Fundamentally, what Bitcoin offers is it offers decentralized, distributed digital trust. That is the essence of intrinsic value. It is a system which no one is in charge of. It is a system that is censorship resistant. It's a system that you don't have to ask permission in order to use it or engage it or to leverage it however you want in your own business. So that's intrinsically valuable. And for our company, we process millions of dollars a year in payments to employees around the world. We invoice customers who pay us in cryptocurrency. We save dramatic amounts of money from interchange fees, wire transfer fees, just dealing with the headaches of having to get small amounts of payments to contractors and freelance writers, et cetera. So there is an intrinsic value to Bitcoin, and it's in all of the things that you can do only with Bitcoin. Now, again, I wouldn't loop.
Can you actually, I think people's issue is that they can't put a dollar figure on that trust, on that intrinsic value. And until they can, for the most part, people have trouble wrapping their minds around the fact that there is no underlying asset like gold or dollars. It's translatable, but it's the intrinsic value part that people have a hard time putting into monetary terms.
Yeah, I mean, how do you quantify that for gold?
Yeah. Same in that you can quantify how much gold is out there and what the spot price is, but it's a similar thing.
Yeah, I can quantify how many Bitcoin there are, and I can quantify what the spot price is of Bitcoin.
Right.
But I mean, what is digital trust worth? What is a store of value worth? It's a question that doesn't have an exact answer.
Right. That is the story probably of the next several years of the evolution of cryptocurrency. What is it actually? What is that trust worth? And that'll be fun to write about and read about.
Yeah, I think a digital store of value fundamentally is it has a binary outcome. Bitcoin either is or is not a store of value. If it is a store of value, the upside for Bitcoin is unlimited. It can get much, much bigger than it is right now, more so than maybe even the most bullish cryptocurrency users believe. If you wanted to quantify the value of email, it's much bigger than the market of the fax machine and the U.S. Postal Service. It's all the new types of transactions that enable that weren't possible before. If Bitcoin is not a store of value, then the price is going to go to zero.
Right. No, that's a great point. If you didn't have email in your life, how much would it cost you? It's a tough parallel, but it's one that I think we'll start to see over time. In a while, if you didn't have the blockchain as the underlying distributed ledger or the underlying way of looking at transactions, how much would it cost you? And I think that's where the value will become a lot more relevant to people.
Another big myth, the blockchain is secure. We hear every other day of hacks. We hear every other day of frozen assets in the millions. Like in Germany, we had 2 cases of really big scandals around that. How secure is the blockchain and the applications on the blockchain?
Well, those are, I guess, 2 different questions. In terms of how secure is the protocol, or like, let's say the Bitcoin blockchain, for example, it's extremely secure. It's open source. It's honestly, as secure as anything can be today. Now, in terms of people custodying or storing their Bitcoins, the internet is inherently vulnerable. I think that it's going to be pretty messy going forward for the next decades at least, as we kind of grapple with that vulnerable infrastructure layer. But gold, just because gold is robbed out of a bank by Bonnie and Clyde, it isn't an indictment of gold. It's an indictment of the security functions of the bank that you were storing your gold at. Now, in terms of just blockchain applications in general, just because it's on the blockchain doesn't make it true. So I can lie and I can input that data into a blockchain, and that lie is now immutably stamped on the blockchain. So you can't trust anything that you're reading from the blockchain that's input by a user, but you can trust the basic parameters of that system if it's open source and the code is available to be reviewed.
Right. It's as secure as the people using it, but the underlying foundation should make it more secure. But there are individual actors on it, and you have to be able to trust them or trust the process underlying it, and I think that's the value.
Okay, there's a very specific question from the audience, perhaps for David. Myth or not, Tether is actually worth $1. Is this cryptocurrency bound to a fiat, the dollar?
What's the question exactly?
Is it? Is it really worth $1? Because
So there's such a thing as counterparty risk. And I don't know how greatly I would discount the price of or value of a tether based on that counterparty risk. But it is true that I can go and I can buy and I can sell a tether for roughly $1 in today's market. Now, if the bank account that all of the dollars are sitting in gets seized by the government, then it's going to put that very much in doubt.
Okay, one question which is absolutely not a myth, because I can tell for myself. Why is the user experience still so awful? I think a very relevant question, because this will decide, I guess, over the fate of the whole field and sphere.
I would, to this question, I would say take a time machine back about 5 years and look at what the user experience was like then, and it's improved by leaps and bounds. But I think fundamentally we have a lot of engineers building applications who don't understand people very well. And even the most user-friendly wallets today are technical and not that easy to understand. And we've invented a lot of lingo too that inherently creates some learning curve. Just to be able to participate in the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency universe, you have to know what a wallet is. You have to know what the blockchain is. You have to know, what UTXOs are, sort of. So.
Right. The internet wasn't so pretty either 20 years ago to use. Things take time to develop. We get a ton of questions every day, every month on the very basics. People are still asking, what is a wallet? What is cold storage? What is an ICO? What's the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin? So in this room, in the community, there is a lot of lingo, there's a lot of inside knowledge. But in general, people are still learning fundamentals and the foundations of what this is all about.
Another very important thing, it's more a fact nowadays than a myth, I guess, is are the problems we see. It's the energy consumptions, it's the number of transactions that actually can be handled on several blockchains. We're not talking about one, but we're talking about many blockchains right now, of course. David, what do you think in terms of all those stats and graphics that basically one Bitcoin transaction uses as much energy like a household for many weeks, a month, or a year? Is that a myth? Is that true? And what does it mean for the future?
Yeah, so energy consumption isn't necessarily about, or isn't about at all, the transaction throughput of a blockchain. It's really about fundamentally what is the point of the blockchain, which is security. Again, with the transaction throughput, you can rapidly increase the amount of transactions that a blockchain can clear if you're willing to give up the decentralized or a degree of decentralization of the system, which cuts to the very core of what is the point of the blockchain. I do think it's a very interesting observation that Bitcoin right now consumes about 0.5% of all the energy in the world. That's pretty startling figure, but what's more startling is that if there is another Bitcoin boom, which I very, very much believe there will be, and we see another 50x or 100x increase in the price of Bitcoin, what does that mean for the amount of power being consumed by the system? Because the amount of power is completely a subject of whether or not it's profitable to mine. And if the price goes up, people are going to spend more resources on mining. So what happens if Bitcoin is consuming 5 or 10 or 20% of the global energy? That's going to be unbelievable.
That's a problem. That's going to be a problem, but it's also one that you've got to think engineers will be working on to solve, although there is no clear path to solving that.
So we have 30 seconds left, but we can't leave the stage, of course, without touching the biggest myth of all. Who's behind the white paper? Who's Satoshi? Is it an individual, a group? You can make big news here on the stage.
So I'm going to come out and admit no.
I was doing shots with him at the Brazen Head Tavern last night, so...
I truly don't know who Satoshi is, and when I first got into crypto, I tried to figure that out, and even the earliest users of crypto don't know who Satoshi is, and I don't think it really matters. That's the beauty of the system.
I agree. Doesn't matter whoever that is. We should be grateful.
Thank you so much. I hope we got some of the myths busted here. Thank you for your question, your time here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.